Do you know the classic action movie Terminator 2 had a completely different storyline, but was changed at the last minute? That's right. Several changes were made during the movie's production, such as the one where Arnold Schwarzenegger was both the hero and the villain in the movie. The sudden change in storylines hurt Schwarzenegger's feelings because he preferred the previous storyline. What was the original storyline about, and why was it changed? Released in 1984, The Terminator took Hollywood by storm with its intense action scenes and the iconic villain role played by Arnold Schwarzenegger. The movie was a massive success, leaving fans excited for a sequel. James Cameron, the movie's director, began working on a sequel to The Terminator after seeing the first movie's success, but it took 7 years of rewriting before Terminator 2 was released. The wait was worth it because Terminator 2 is still known as one of the action movie classics today. But just like the first film, there were big ideas for Terminator 2 that unfortunately couldn't be filmed due to the movie's budget, which led to many changes. One of the moments we missed in James Cameron's original idea was seeing 2 Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminators. There was also no T-1000 in Terminator 2's initial storyline because he maintained the villain's role of Schwarzenegger, who we already knew from the first movie. Originally, the villain in Terminator 2 was supposed to be another T-800, like Schwarzenegger, but as a metal skeleton. So Skynet would send an Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator to the past, and then the Resistance would reprogram another Arnold Terminator to save young John. Doppelgangers weren't common in the movie industry in 1984, so that would have been unreal. After defeating the evil T-800, Skynet would then send the more advanced T-1000, but William Wisher, Cameron's co-writer, didn't like the idea from the start. He thought that Arnold fighting himself would be just boring. Even though having Arnold Schwarzenegger play both the good and evil Terminators would have been visually cool, James Cameron thought it might be too gimmicky. He was also worried that Arnold wouldn't like the idea of playing 2 roles. Another issue was that both Terminators would be equally strong in a fight, so there would be a little escalation in the threat. That's why Cameron and William Wisher decided to go with the stark contrast between the big, bulky original Terminator and the sleek, agile T-1000. Cameron even compared them to a tank and a Porsche, showing their differences. Speaking about different, one other different thing we could have seen in the movie is Kyle Reese as the T-1000. It's hard to believe, but in the initial storyline, the T-1000's default form was supposed to be Kyle Reese, played by Michael Biehn in the first movie, instead of the cop, played by Robert Patrick. This would have been even more traumatic for Sarah Connor since Kyle was her hero in the first movie, but James Cameron thought it would be too confusing for viewers. Although later Terminator movies used a twist where characters who seemed human were actually working for Skynet, the bad guys. This twist was later reused in Terminator Genisys, but it was initially planned for Terminator 2. However, the crew didn't regret dumping the Kyle Reese Terminator idea because the amazing T-1000 villain redefined the movie as a massive success. In an earlier version of Terminator 2, Travis Gant, the ex-beret guy mentioned by John Connor, had a bigger part that involved an attack on his ranch home. This scene, which was cut from the movie, would have been like a slasher movie, with the T-1000 killing everyone at the camp. Another scene that made it into the final film, the Salsita Camp sequence, was also almost more violent than what we see in the movie. In the original version of Terminator 2, there is a scene where Salsita sacrifices himself by blowing up to try to kill the T-1000 and save everyone else. But even after blowing up, the T-1000 reformed without any harm and discovered where John was hiding from the children at the camp. It was a shocking twist that showed how tough the T-1000 was as a villain. But because Terminator 2 already had too many intense scenes, killing off a character like Salsita didn't seem like a good idea for the movie as it would have been too dark. Well, it wouldn't have been as dark if we had seen Dyson's missing dream sequence. In the original version of Terminator 2, there was a dream sequence where Dr. Miles Dyson had a dramatic death. In the scene, Dyson would be staring at a photo of his family before a nuclear explosion destroys it. Then, he would have seen his family running away as he dropped the device that triggered the explosion. Although some of Dyson's major scenes were cut from Terminator 2, the shots of the fire that destroyed his family photo were included in the movie's opening credits. Unfortunately, Dyson didn't get a bigger role, and the dramatic sequence was removed. Another sad part of what Terminator 2 would have been was if Arnold's favorite scene had been kept. Sadly, it was deleted. This important scene in Terminator 2 happens in the middle of the movie when Arnold Schwarzenegger's T-800 had just saved John Connor and his mother, Sarah Connor, from the T-1000 Terminator. John is a young boy who is supposed to grow up to lead the human resistance against the machines. They are now hiding out in an old gas station to recover from their injuries. In this scene, John and Sarah remove slugs from the Terminator's body, which leads them to ask the machine questions about its nature. They ask if the bullets hurt, to which the Terminator responds that they register as injuries and could be considered pain. They also inquire if the wounds will heal, to which the Terminator says they will with time. Another question they ask is if the Terminator can learn, to which it replies that its CPU is a neural network processor, making it a learning computer. In the version of Terminator 2 that was shown in theaters and is also considered the Terminator franchise's official story, director James Cameron cuts away from Schwarzenegger as he talks and adds in the line, "The more contact I have with humans, the more I learn." However, this scene was much longer in the original script, and the Terminator's answer to the question was very different. An answer that would have changed everything. We could have also seen an ending of endings in Terminator 2. Originally, James Cameron wanted Terminator 2 to have a definitive ending, wrapping up the entire franchise early and positively. This might seem like a good idea, especially considering the drop in the quality of the later movies in the series. However, Cameron was convinced not to do this, and in the end, it was probably the right decision. In the original ending of Terminator 2, there was a scene where an older Sarah Connor watches her son John play with his young daughter in a park. She mentions that Judgment Day never happened, and life has continued normally. John is now a U.S. Senator trying to make a positive impact. While this ending was happy, it was also a bit cheesy, and the makeup used to age Sarah didn't look very good. The decision to change this ending was mainly influenced by Mario Kassar, the lead producer of the sequel. Kassar wanted to keep the Terminator franchise open for more movies, which is why he pushed for a different ending to Terminator 2. He and James Cameron argued about the ending, but Kassar eventually convinced Cameron to test the new ending with an audience. Even though Cameron loved the original ending, he ultimately decided to change it to keep the story open for future movies. So, if you had to choose, do you think the series should have ended with Terminator 2, or are you glad there were more sequels? Let us know your thoughts in the comment sections below.